My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I've been a little bit long-winded on some of my videos over the last few days, but this is such an awesome subject of the relationship between the tribulation and the resurrection. And look, I haven't even shared with you some of the other great texts from the Old Testament that make this connection between the tribulation, that is the time of the judgment on Israel, and the resurrection, the judgment, the kingdom. I haven't even touched the book of Zechariah, for instance. I haven't touched the book of Malachi, for instance. Yet both of those great prophecies have predictions of the last days, tribulation, in which only the remnant would be saved, which is part of the end-time narrative of the Jewish story of eschatology, leading to, guess what? The kingdom, the Messiah, the everlasting reign of the Messiah. So again, I hope you understand that our examination of the birth pangs of Messiah has not been extensive. It has not been exhaustive. If you want more of an exhaustive treatment, then get a copy of my book, The Resurrection of Daniel 12, verse 2, Fulfilled or Future. In this book, I just catalog. I catalog books like Zechariah and the prediction of the Great Tribulation, followed by the judgment and the kingdom, the resurrection. And you will see that it's perfectly consistent with every other text that we've examined so far. So please get a copy of that. Well, I shared with you that, and this was a little bit of a teaser, that Jesus picks up the motif of the Great Tribulation, end of the age, resurrection. In Matthew chapter 24, and one of these days I'm going to have to do a series, an entire series on the Olivet Discourse. I've had several requests that I do that. It would be a study as long as the resurrection series, for sure. Anyway, as Jesus walks out of the temple, the disciples begin to ask him, or to point out to him the glory and the beauty and the size of the stones of the temple. And they're doing it because Jesus has just said, your house is left to you desolate. They understand, the disciples do, that, okay, this is cataclysmic. And so they ask him, tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of your coming, your parousia, and the end of the age? Here's something you need to know. That term, end of the age, by the way, it's not end of the world. Get that idea out of your mind. That's not a biblical idea. Okay, what shall be the sign of your parousia, your presence, and the end of the age? What you need to know is that term, end of the age, is from a very distinctive Greek term, syntelia to aeonia, and different forms of it, okay? Aeonion, aeoniou, etc. Anyway, a cognate of that is found in Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. Daniel, seal up the vision until the time of the end. So Daniel's predicting the time of the end, a time of the judgment upon the holy people, when the power of the holy people would be completely shattered. Here is Jesus predicting the utter destruction of the Jerusalem temple, and the disciples are going, well, tell us what will be the sign of the end of the age. Now look, I was raised believing, teaching, advocating, that when Jesus predicted that the fall of Jerusalem, the utter destruction of the temple, that the disciples were automatically thinking about the end of the Christian age. They were thinking about the end of time. John Calvin said it was impossible for the disciples to imagine the destruction of that incredible edifice unless it was to occur at the end of time. Suddenly dawned on me one day that I had an awful lot of presuppositions going on. I was inserting something into the text. Point number one, let me ask you this question. What age did that temple represent? What did it symbolize? What was it the very expression of? What age did it express? Did it symbolize the Christian age? Well, pretty obviously, no. So what age did the temple represent? The Old Covenant age. Now here's something you need to understand. The only age that the Bible ever predicted to end is the Old Covenant age of Israel. The New Covenant age of Jesus Christ has no end. You know what? If you can get that one singular fact down, the Christian age has no end, then you can put to rest any and all speculation, ponderings, and doctrines of the end of the Christian age. It's just that simple. So here we have Jesus predicting the destruction of the temple, which represented the Old Covenant age, and the disciples, upon hearing the prediction of the destruction of that temple, ask, well, we need to have some signs for when that will take place. When that end of the age, represented by that temple, will occur. Once again, folks, they're not asking about the end of the Christian age, and they're not asking about the end of the material cosmos. I believe N.T. Wright, R.T. France, and a host of other scholars are absolutely correct when they say the Jews did not expect, nor did their scriptures predict, the end of material creation. Okay, point number two. John Calvin said the disciples simply could not grasp, could not fathom, could not accept the destruction of that temple unless it had occurred at the end of time. Really? Were the disciples aware that the first temple, the Solomonic temple, had been destroyed in 586 BC, and yet time marched on? The earth was not burned up? Material creation didn't come to an end? Well, of course they were aware of that. They even had a feast to commemorate that event. So John Calvin and similar commentators who say the disciples of necessity linked the fall of that temple, the destruction of that temple, with the end of time, are not thinking logically. The disciples knew, understood, and commemorated the fall of the first temple in 586 BC. Here is another destruction of the Solomonic temple, actually the Herodian temple this time around. But you see, they knew from the Old Testament, from the passages that I've been sharing with you, from Jeremiah 30, Isaiah 24 through 27, all of those Old Testament prophecies of the Messianic woes leading to the time of the end, the judgment, and the resurrection. They knew the temple would be destroyed, and that age represented by the temple would come to an end. That's precisely what Daniel chapter 12 foretold. When the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all of these things will be fulfilled. So we have Jesus in Matthew chapter 24 predicting the time of the end of the age. And as we shall see as we continue, he predicted the great tribulation, the coming of the Lord, the judgment, and the kingdom to come in that generation. So we'll see you on the flip side.